So, City Press shocks us this morning by giving us the news of the Ndlovu's so sad divorce. Okay, and it made me remember a couple of videos that were online. First, a video that they made on their platform. Hungani went to that husband podcast. I'm talking about is not particularly to that. It's not particularly to say, okay, they say that this is what broke the relationship. No, I haven't seen the article. I just saw the headline. And I was like, yeah, that's wild. But it reminded me of a certain module that was there when I used to do this Bible theology classes and stuff. And they had a module which became one of my favorite modules. I've kind of modeled my life after that idea, called Christian living. So under the whole theology study, you had this particular module on what does Christian life look like. And even if you come to discipleship classes are modeled after that. It's more on what is Christian living. First one from 3 years back, saying we thought of getting a divorce. This was 3 years back. 3 years back. Now, there's something that they said in there that I was like,
you've changed my life.
Was this part of the video?
If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be who
Anyway,
and what
okay.
I am
Thank
right
you so
now.
much, Hungani. And C. So yeah, we decided to have this conversation based off another conversation that Petronella and I were having, and then subsequent to that, Hungani.
Petronella is her friend.
Yes. I've said it so many times. If you don't know Petronella as my friend.
What if someone's watching us for the very first time and you expect them? That is
Okay.
such a big expectation.
Why?
okay, so yes, might be an act, the whole thingy, but so this was a conversation that came up in your friendship. Maybe there was a disagreement between the husband and the wife, and then this conversation ends up reaching the friend, and then her and the friend start having this conversation. What if you guys got divorced? So I thought that was okay. All right. I thought that was thing. But then when I remembered a particular portion where, just give me a second, on the That Husband podcast, at about 21 minutes, they speak about a certain period of their marriage.
Yeah.
She wasn't trying to.
Nah, she wasn't having it.
Right here.
Oh, yeah.
And you address.
It's a wild journey.
I saw a video you did with your wife.
Which one? We do so many.
Yeah, and the miscarriage.
Oh, yeah.
And you address that,
Yeah.
how you, in the process of all of that, you were trying to speak.
Yeah.
And she wasn't trying to.
Nah, she wasn't having it at all.
Yeah. And how long did that last?
Man.
And how did you navigate that? Because I mean, like, she's going through something.
Yo, that was hard, man.
Next level.
That was hard.
So those are the only two portions those are the two portions I'm going to take. So first, there is already this conversation that has been accepted of we might split up, right? And then in the midst of that conversation having now being a thing, now we're not communicating when traumas and difficulties arise. Those feelings just never get communicated. And by the way, communicating them doesn't mean that I know what to do with them. Okay? Yeah. Because I might be going through the same in the same manner. So if I knew how to get you through that, I'll probably we'll be all on the same page. And so sometimes that communication or knowing that they have heard me. Why? Because should you go to a friend and communicate those feelings, when you come back here, there's this thing where they tell you, be careful communicating the things that you want to do, right? Or telling people the things you want to do, because what ends up happening is that you get a pleasure of telling it and actually not doing anything about it. And so now, because you've told someone else who's not your husband, you can tend to have this feeling of as if, how does he know? I've spoken about it. Now, not that you have, is that your mind treats that one treatment, like that one treatment you got from your friend when you spoke about those feelings, how you feel, whatnot, and feel like, yeah, I can talk about that with my friend, and not realize you had that child not with your friend. Get your friend out of that conversation. That's a place where your husband's conversation, that's where he's kind of at. You gotta have that conversation. And unfortunately, for many people, they fall in. And if a person falls in, there's gonna come a point where the breaking point comes and they need to talk. The worst thing that could happen for a person is for that person to be, now in her case, might have been a friend and so forth, because at this point she was talking to a friend and on all that kind of stuff. And so the worst thing that could happen is that it could be a male or a person of the opposite gender who listens. That's the worst thing. I'm telling you, that is the worst thing that could ever happen. The worst thing that could ever happen is for a person of the opposite gender to listen to you during that time when you think in your head, because remember, your mind looks for solutions. And so your mind is going to run to, hey, you've actually talked about it, and you forget, no, you didn't talk about this to him. And so now you're going to credit that as he doesn't listen to me, without you having communicated that. So it can build a gap. It's a terrible idea. Falling inside. You've seen multiple relationships which they go through a crisis, they handle it terribly, which is what? You end up talking to everybody else and not talking together, the two of you. Okay? And it doesn't have to be something traumatic. It can be something like unemployment, like the other person loses their job, the other person is just not feeling okay, something like that. Those things must be communicated. The first person to hear those things is not your friend. The first person to hear those things or embrace those feelings is your soul partner, not your friend. Not your friend. My friends can't tell you where I am now. Okay? But there's someone who can tell you exactly the thought process, what, all that. And so that doesn't go to friends. It goes to the closest person that I'm next to. Because it's going to create a pleasure of having talked about it, while as I haven't talked about it with this person. And so now, because this person listens, and I'll give this example. I once had a situation where this whole thing broke a relationship. Yeah. And there was nothing that actually happened in that relationship that should result to a breakup of a relationship. There was nothing, I kid you not. There was absolutely nothing that should credit to that. It was the fact that this other lady had now resorted to talking to another male. And before you know it, it's like, oh no, you don't even know me. Yeah, the lady was now speaking like that. Like, no, you don't even know me. I feel like we've grown apart. We haven't grown apart. You've created a gap because instead of telling me where you're at, you was telling someone. In this case here, I'm just giving an example of what can cause such a divide. Because if you think about it, once you cross that line where we've had so much time, where I've gone through, or it feels like I've gone through the trouble by myself, in what do we connect? Like where do we connect? And so people talk about, we've grown apart. You didn't grow apart. The most essential period And remember, the mind will trick us to say, I've talked about it and this person isn't listening. Yeah, you probably never talked to them about it. There was an episode I saw, the first episode of her and her friend. And I don't mean this in a bad way. I'm just kind of like just reflect over this particular thought. She says this.
Or in a state of bondage. But then
In the intro.
I was thinking to myself, that is a powerful illustration of how certain friendships can either keep you, metaphorically speaking, in that sense, like of like in a paralyzed state or in a state of bondage. But then there are other friendships that can also help your healing and can help you move forward and can help.
Yeah, so and I get this isn't the first episode that she did with her friend. And because if we don't, if we lean on other relationships emotionally too much, and then this side it just doesn't balance, it's going to feel like that. It's going to, because it's going to feel like that. It's going to come to, there is no, because should any one of you do any wrong, that's it. The relationship is broken. It's dead. Completely out. Basketball hoop. Why? Because in what do we connect? In what do we connect? It's going to feel like that because I've communicated these feelings elsewhere, and now I'm even talking about, there's no forgiveness. So basically, if someone does anything wrong, anything, don't matter what, if anybody does anything, that's it. It's done. There's no forgiveness. You're not going to move on. What? Because why? Already, we are not. He that has an ear, let him hear. I'm just saying, there are certain areas. This is why they say relationships should have counseling, in the sense that it's not bad. It's not when you have bad things happening that you should look for that. Even Black mentioned the same thing when he came to the podcast and he spoke about their relationship. He's like, you know what? You don't just need counseling before, you need counseling after. It's not only in the bad times, it's that the journey and being accountable to each other and being able to make sure that this is balanced. I'm not saying that I'm saying here first and then that's what builds. That's what makes those relationships like this, those tight. Now, the negative of our social media thing is that everybody's an expert, right? And so it's very easy to listen to a person like me saying, you're not married, right? It's very easy to take that. But you see, like the modules I'm talking about, these modules about Christian living, they are not built off of these ideas of whether you're married or what. It speaks on the principles of what is it that builds. And so what I'm talking about, a person can dismiss because you don't have a ring on your finger. They can use that because they can't deal with whether the things that I'm saying you can uphold biblically. Now ask your counselor, ask a friend who's a counselor, and ask them, is what I'm saying truthful? Before you dismiss it to say, he doesn't have a ring on his finger. How can that be true? The moment I start pouring myself out, or feeling like, this is the negative. Let me put it like this. If I decide to close myself off emotionally, no, I don't want to talk, right? And then I go through that, there's no such a thing. There is going to be a breaking moment. So it's better to talk now. It's better right now. It has just happened. That's when to talk. It's better to do that now because you don't want that break to happen in front of another person who is not this person that you have a life partnership commitment with. That happens with friends out and about. That happens with some buddy of yours or the opposite gender buddy of yours. It's going to reflect back as, you know what, I don't think my husband listens to me. I'm telling you, I've seen it once break a relationship that nothing was wrong in. The relationship had nothing wrong. It's not like the man had done something. It's that they were at a good place, but the lady had started to rely elsewhere on communicating where she was and all those things. And it just broke them up because it felt like, in what do we connect? But if we don't look back at these things, and when things happen, when traumatic things happen, we just don't communicate them, Sometimes someone just feels a little bit, they feel terrible because they lost their job. Someone just feels completely out of place because they lost a grandmother. They lost someone in their family who they feel that much attached to, and they just never get time to actually tell you about it, or those memories and whatnot and stuff like that. And so it creates this room of divide. And because that's never been communicated, this person doesn't listen to me. It completely discredits everything else, because in this one area I feel as if I'm dealing with it by myself. And you completely forget you didn't engage the conversation. It's important to engage it right there. Now, that brings up all other kind of conversations and stuff like that, Y'all keep them in prayer there, and that God would heal those wounds. Me, I'm praying for there's nothing else I'm praying for. That's the only thing I'm praying for. Outside of that, no. That's a thing. But just be careful in those relationships. Those things must be communicated. We shouldn't distance ourselves. Yes, they are our friends, but that particular... No. That starts there. Yes, you can talk about it with your friend, but starts there. Right? It starts there. Once we've started there, yes, some people, they're just completely shut off and they're just not going to think yes, but you've talked. Now you've talked. What you don't want is for your mind to credit it as, yeah, you've talked about it, but then you just forgot. Or, no, you talked about it with someone else, not with them, and stuff like that. Sarikis Christianity Show, daily Christian commentary videos. Other episodes down in the pin comments. Y'all keep them in prayer.